Let's do more selling with SOAR selling. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the digitally remastered reintroduction of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. I'm recording this intro again, New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2016. 3.5 years after this first episode went live. This episode went live on May 28th, 2013. I had started podcasting in 2009 and didn't stick with it. And then I got smart and stuck with it. But it took a few years. So I would encourage you to pull the trigger and ride the bullet on whatever it is you think you need to get done, whatever you know you need to do. Today's guests, David and Marhnelle Hibbard, are the authors of SOAR Selling. You'll notice when I switch over to the original episode, I've got different intro music. I start differently. I even recorded differently. When you listen to the more current episodes, it's a much better sound quality. You know, I learned a lot doing 224 episodes. But this month, like I said, is my biggest download month ever in the history of the show. So interest continues to grow 3.5 years later. It's been a great resource for me to reach out personally and engage with interesting people of excellence. It's given me a chance to spend one-on-one time with quality people like David and Marhnelle. Their book is called SOAR Selling, and they agreed really just out of the blue. I did not know them. I had followed them online. I reached out. They stepped up and said yes. So I will be eternally grateful to them taking that chance, although, you know, it's a small chance, right? Just do an interview, record it. But I was not famous, you know. I don't think I'm still famous, but the show didn't exist, and they agreed. So I appreciate it. But again, it shows you need to get started. I really sometimes am quite saddened when I think back to what could have happened if I stuck with this in 2009. But hey, water under the bridge, right? You got to keep moving forward. But like I said, in just a minute, we'll switch over and I'll play it from the beginning, the intro music that I had and how the interview went. And now I'm also adding a second podcast called the CRM Sushi Podcast. So check that out. That's going live in January 2017, where I have technology leaders, founders, inventors demo their technology. And that'll be a video podcast to help you make sense of this crazy technology world, to see if these tools are really any good, if they're really worth your time and your money to help you grow your sales. So be on the lookout for that. But as I mentioned earlier, 224 episodes. I've changed the format, I've changed the artwork, I've changed the summaries, how I list the content, how I link to their books and my guests' various resources. Now I've got an Amazon store that'll show everything ever recommended through the podcast, over 224 episodes. And I've got no plans to slow down. So we live in a great age, but remember, if information was the key to success, we'd all be successful. Access to information has never been easier. There's never been more information produced faster in the history of mankind, yet people still struggle. You need to sort, sift, and separate the information you allow into your brain the same way you sort, sift, and separate prospects. So find something that you like, find something that resonates, and then stick with it. I equate business coaches and sales trainers to golf pros. When I was learning golf, my dad bought me golf lessons for my 23rd birthday. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but I stuck with that pro for my entire time living in that city. I was at Texas A&M, actually at grad school, and it was only a few months, but I didn't shop around, right? He got me lessons, and I bought more lessons, and I stuck with him. When I moved, I got lessons from another pro. I found one that I liked, and I stuck with that person. And, I was still in the Air Force, and so I would move every year, but I didn't shop around. I found one that resonated with me, and I stuck with that person. And sure, over time you might outgrow that person, but bouncing around, taking driving lessons from one and putting lessons from another, it doesn't make sense. Okay, unless you can get to the cream of the crop, right? The best of the best, maybe. But you and I are trying to grow a business. You know what you need. You know who resonates with you. And you know, too, if you're copping out. You know if you're listening to someone that's just giving you an excuse to continue down a failed path. After 224 episodes, one I've got coming up, it's going to be, let me look at my notes here. Episode 227, I want to publish with Anthony Iannarino. Great guy, super successful business owner, salesperson, author, speaker. And we got into the question of cold calling. And I've asked this of many of my guests over the years. You've got a bunch of snake oil salesmen out there saying cold calling doesn't work. And I'm here to tell you that it still does, especially in B2B. Go listen to episode 222, Alex Berman, young guy. Blew up his company he was selling for. He left. He quit his sales job to become a consultant for them to help with marketing because he was so successful in what he was doing, and it was B2B cold calls. Granted, it's not sexy. Granted, with today's technology, you have access to get information on people, so it should not be 100% totally random, totally blind, totally cold. But the point is, things like that still work. So find someone that knows what they're doing. Find someone that's still doing it, that's still in the arena, and then follow them and master what it is they're teaching. Once you master what they're teaching, then it's time to find somebody new. But until then, stick with it, okay? Thanks for tuning into this. Again, the sound quality is not as great, but hey, this was the first episode. At least I got started. And I encourage you to do the same. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. When you're done, please share a little love. Give us a review. And now get ready to take some notes with David and Marhnelle Hibbard.
All right, welcome everybody. This is Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer. And as I restart my expert interview series, I'm thrilled to have on the co-author couple, right, from SOAR Selling. This is David and Marhnelle Hibbard. Co-founders of, you pronounce it Dialexis, right?
That's correct. It is.
Right.
Thanks.
Pretty good for a Southern boy, huh?
Yes.
Really good.
Good for anybody.
I know. I mean, I grew up in the South where, English was an elective. But anyway, David and Marhnelle are the co-founders of, you hear all the time an industry-leading sales company, right? But I've been watching these guys. I've read their book. I've watched their videos. They are an industry-leading sales company. They are co-authors of this national book by McGraw-Hill called SOAR Selling, as I mentioned, How to Get Through to Almost Anybody, the Proven Method for Reaching Decision Makers. So, David and Marhnelle, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to speak with me.
Well, thanks a lot, Wes. We're excited to be on your show. It's a great show, so we're happy to be invited.
Absolutely.
And let's just jump right into it. So the book is SOAR Selling, but SOAR is an acronym, right? What does that stand for?
Right. Wes, it stands for Surge of Accelerating Revenue. So what we found is our clients, once they've used this process, have really, their revenue is soared. So it made perfect sense to call it that.
Okay. And your subtitle. So I'm a big marketing guy. I always tell people I was a marketer trapped in the salesman's body for all these years. And the subtitle is so important, and it's okay to have a really long subtitle because it helps people understand what you're getting after, right? But so as yours suggests, you have methods for getting to decision makers in this book, right? And so I know we don't have forever, so we have a quick interview here to delve into all the tactics and the methods for doing that. But can you briefly touch on what it means to get in, and then hit those other areas? What have you observed is the biggest problem for salespeople when it comes to reaching decision makers?
Right. Well, there are two components that we found. One is it really is the underpinning, which is the mindset. and the other is the formula, the tactic, or the process, the methodology. Both Dave and I came from commercial real estate, and finding new business, people that were moving, relocating, we were in commercial real estate in California, was eminent as far as our reputation, but also our income was concerned. So finding those people and getting through to those people was paramount. So most of the systems out there, Wes, as you know, are teaching people what to do once you get in front of someone. But what we found is that it was probably the most difficult challenge was how to get in front of someone to be able to see if they were moving or relocating or expanding their building. So it became a quest of ours because it was the toughest part of the process.
Yeah, and Wes, what was happening and is still happening is the way that salespeople or anyone gets through to someone is by a formula that we call BTN plus L, by the numbers plus luck. And it's an acronym you hear about a lot, or a statement you hear a lot, and that is just make a lot of calls and eventually you'll get through. And that's a brutal methodology, and so we wanted to solve that, and we did.
Yeah, it was always brutal and just keeps getting harder with caller ID and voicemail and everything else.
Yeah, that it does.
I remember working for a startup years ago, and I've always said, basically, there's almost no salespeople that have ever had sales training. All we get is product training.
Well, you just stole our big line, because we're going to hire you now because you're a believer. That is absolutely the case that we find.
Right. And it's a misnomer, a myth that most organizations feel like, well, I've hired you. You are in sales, so you're supposed to know how to sell. So let me just speak about the product. But you're absolutely right. I mean, really, there is so little training done as far as how to be a great salesperson. So it's really nice to be able to contribute to that genre, if you will, of educating salespeople.
Yeah, and Wes, and if I might add to what Marhnelle said, and you're so dead on, is you're right, they're getting product knowledge training, but they're not held in a sense of accountability of product knowledge training. They're held on production of sales, yet that is not the piece of work that they're being trained on. So that they don't always hit quota or budget because most of them don't know how, and they just try harder and harder. And they get judged about not winning when really they're armed with product knowledge rather than the art of making contact or what to say when they make contact or how to sell at all.
Right. And so you talk about mindset. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. What we found is there's two segments. I think Marhnelle mentioned it in teaching, this thing called SOAR. And one of them is the mechanics of SOAR. That is, how do you make contact with a decision maker. The other part has to do with what's your mindset for wanting to do the task in the first place. And so mindset becomes a big component of what we focus on in the book. And it's what creates the intention for doing what people feel is the ugly or the hard. And that's the big piece where we're focusing.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because mindset, you can hear what a person's mindset is. So if I was saying to you, Wes, well, I'm going to try to see if I can make that tomorrow. You hear the word try to make it. Instead of a conviction, we'll absolutely make it happen, I'll be there. And so oftentimes what we find is that people are trying to do what they're supposed to be doing, and yet they don't realize that their mindset plays such an integral part of the outcome. I was told that Henry Ford said this, but if you can or you can't, either way you're right. It's just whatever it is that you believe, and I just completely ruined that. Do you think you can or you think you
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can't, you're right.
Thanks, Wes. You're supposed to help me on this here. But that's how mindset plays such a huge part of it. So we can teach techniques all day long, but if you go in thinking you can't, then you're going to be right about it. You're not going to be able to do it. So mindset's a huge component.
Yeah, my dad always says, if you think you're desperate, you are.
Yeah, that's right.
So don't be desperate.
That's right.
And I think, there's so much head trash going on out there, put out really by, I think, a lot of self-promoters, really, with the, cold calling is dead, yada, yada. And, as an entrepreneur, like with my small business where I have control and I've built it over many, many years, I don't have to cold call anymore. But I cold called like crazy to start it. And when I was in corporate America, I lived by the phone. I mean, despite what corporate America says they're doing from their marketing and branding standpoint, I was never at a company that gave me all of the warm leads I could ever handle to meet and exceed my quota. So I had to get on the phone.
The only company I know that does that would be like Walmart, where you just stand in there and then people come in.
Well, exactly. But then you're not in sales. You're an order taker.
That's right. That's right. No, a very true statement that there are no leads. I mean, that really is true. There are no leads. And the one thing that I want to, distinguish right now in the conversation, Wes, is that we originally did this for cold calling, but what Dave and I have both found, that if you're a senior person like yourself, Wes, you said, I've got repeat business and so on, the methodology of SOAR supports you or anyone in making contact much more efficiently, number one, or much more strategically. 90% of the time you can get through to a decision maker or a high influencer on a cold call or a strategic call, or even someone you just want to get back to. We always laugh and say, tag, you're it. It's the voicemail back and forth, like it's almost a tennis game. And that really, you don't get any production from that. So
no. You
can use SOAR even if you know the person and you just want to make contact more efficiently.
Right. I agree. So one thing I like in your book was the use of examples where something was good. And actually you've got things where things failed. Could you share an example of how a poor mindset affected an outcome?
Yeah, there's so many. We see it a lot, and mostly where we see it, Wes, is when our instructors are teaching SOAR live for corporations. They end the session by making live calls. Now, these aren't the instructors making the calls; these are the students making the calls. And where we see the failure, so to speak, is when the person who comes up to sit at the table and make these live calls, and we do it on a rotational basis, the ones who sit down and say, as Marhnelle just said, well, I'm going to try to get this guy and see if I can get him on the phone. And you hear that subliminal message, and then they're the ones that create their own reality. The people that sit down and I or the instructor would say to them, all right, what's your intent on this call? And these are ice cold dials they're making. And we say, what is your intent? And the person says, I'm going to reach this person. I'm going to get an appointment, and I'm going to go out and see him. And we say, are you sure? Absolutely. They create that kind of result. So the success of a call that is a first-time net call is often the result of how the person enters the call with their mindset. We see it all the time.
Yep. Amen. It's you really do create your own reality.
Yeah, it's like people say, well, the economy is tough, prospecting doesn't work. Even on that, you mentioned that there's a book or something on the net saying cold calling is dead, doesn't work. And we always say the guy that wrote that, if it was a guy, is absolutely right, because he says it doesn't work because obviously he doesn't know how to do it. So it doesn't work for him. He's not wrong. He just doesn't know how to do it. So we know that doing select target contact dialing is the game.
Right.
Not necessarily just sitting down and hammering a bunch of cold calls. But the success of it takes smart mechanics, which is in the book, and it also takes a reinvigorated mindset. Those two things shift the game for salespeople or anyone dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. One thing in your book that I liked as well was the keyword listening, what you call it. And I think you already touched on one or two of those, but could you give us a few common words and tell us how SOAR selling students would hear them versus others?
Well, I'm going to let Dave do this, but Dave has a funny way of putting it because he says in your personal life, you hear things without anyone telling you the distinction. But in business, for some reason, we let keywords fly by and knock us down, and we don't get it.
Yeah, here's an example you asked for, Paul. You know, Wes, excuse me, Wes, sorry.
That was a keyword.
That's a keyword slip. So, Wes, a salesperson makes a call and says, the operator says American Products or whatever they say, and the salesperson says, Bill Smith, please. And the operator says, I don't believe he's in. Would you like his voicemail? And then the salesperson says, okay, or do you know when he'll be back or she'll be back? And they hang up. And then we say, well, why didn't you talk to Bill? Well, they said, the operator said he wasn't in. No, they didn't say he wasn't in. Yeah, they did. No, they didn't. We heard it. Well, what did they say, the salesperson says? And we say, well, you tell us. They don't know. They didn't even hear it. As Marhnelle said, they missed it. So what they said was, if they said it slowly, was, I don't believe he's in. They don't hear that. If they ask their child, did you take a cookie while Daddy was gone? And the kid says, I don't believe so. The parent hears that clearly. But they don't hear it on a call. And we don't really know why. We don't know if they don't really want to make contact or they're so nervous about making a call in the first place that they don't hear the words. We're not quite sure what it is, but I can tell you they don't hear it. Another example of keyword listening would be where the receptionist would say, the person would say, Bill Smith, please, and the receptionist says, just a moment, and then comes back on the phone and says, I'm pretty sure he's left for lunch. Would you like his voicemail? They don't hear pretty sure. So they say, time will he be back from lunch? And as a result, they hang up and make another call, and ultimately, without success, they say, God, I hate prospecting on the phone. It doesn't work. I think I'll just use social media. That'll work.
Oh, yeah. I see that all the time.
Right.
And look, not that social media isn't good. It is. But even with social media, you have to pick up the phone and call the person that you want to get to, and you still have to get through the receptionist.
Well, yeah.
But they don't always email back. So I think the key is, you know what, it's really, Wes, I think it's taking an opportunity or being responsible for the results you want to create. So do you really, I love the world of selling because I can earn basically what I want to earn if I put my mind to it. And that's what I love about it. I'm not pigeonholed. I have that ability if I use good techniques and I'm really conscientious. And one of the things Dave said, on the keyword listening, people all the time say, I always get voicemail. How do you get away from voicemail? And one of the key things is keyword listening, because oftentimes we've seen this over and over and over in live training that the person is actually there. Right? And maybe just away from his desk or away from her desk so that's it.
Yeah, that's so funny. People say, well, how do you beat voicemail? But just because you get voicemail doesn't mean they're not in, as Marhnelle said. They're just not at the desk, maybe. Wes, here's another that you asked. It's a fun one. When you ask for Bill Smith, let's say, and the operator says, just a moment, comes back on the line, says, I'm sorry, he's not available. And then when we do these kind of role plays in live trainings with SOAR, we say, well, why didn't you talk to him? They said, well, he wasn't available. And we said, well, how do you know that? And they said, well, because the operator said that. So what does that mean? And then they say, well, that means the operator's lying, or the person's trying to block you, or the guy is really there but doesn't want to talk to you. And then we say to them, well, how do you know that's what it means? And then they get all confused, like, what are you talking about? we have had many instances where an operator would say, Bill's not available, let's say, and then we say to the operator, when you say he's not available, do you mean he's in a meeting, he's away from his desk, he's gone for the day? And the operator will turn around and say, no, I haven't seen him today. Well, that doesn't mean he's not available. That means the operator hasn't seen him. So then we get on to a process for finding the guy. It's bizarre how people make so many dials, making small mistakes and getting so discouraged when the answers are clearly there.
Right. Yeah, and I think it goes back, Marhnelle mentioned not quite sure what their issues are. I think salespeople have a very low self-esteem. And I think they don't feel worthy, right? They feel like they're a pest or an intrusion on that CEO or that executive, and so they're not persistent, But
I absolutely agree. I don't think that people realize what a great resource they are if they are professional. So if they really do have good product knowledge, they understand the industry they're in, they know their competition, they know what's in the marketplace, to me, they are a worthy resource to any organization. So if they had that mindset, and that's how when I call on someone, when we were in commercial real estate, most of the CEOs or the decision makers did not have the product knowledge that I did in the marketplace. And that was my value, and with that, they would sit down and be a wonderful audience. Right. But you're right. I think, Wes, that's true. They don't realize their value sometimes.
Yep. And, it's funny talking about answering the phone. I learned this years ago when I was still in sales in corporate America. As soon as I stopped running to the phone, my life got calmer, and I got more productive. Even if it was a client or a prospect calling back. And so now that I've got an assistant of my own, I never answer my own phone if I don't know who's calling, if it's not an appointment, right? But never isn't 100% true. I will answer my phone once or twice a week. Maybe I've got some free time, an appointment got rescheduled, or I'm just curious. Maybe the phone, I see the caller ID come up over and over and over again, so finally I answer. Right, and it shocks a lot of people. They'll be like, like I literally surprise them. So they don't know what to say, right? They'll even hang up. So, can you talk about, that critical, what you have in the book, that value statement, right, and how important that is to the process?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? That is so true. We've seen that in classes where the CEO Bill Smith picks up, and literally people are just dumbfounded. And I have seen one or two hang up in class. It's just blah, 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 But value statement is that, again, if you're making strategic calls, that you really understand the company and their initiatives. What are they up to? What is the company up to in this next year? What's their 5-year plan? So, and what is it that is their pain that they need to maybe overcome? Or what is it from a technological standpoint that you could offer them to help support them in getting them to their vision or their initiatives? So I think that is really key. Again, it goes back to our former conversation about value. If you're really a pro and you understand who you're calling and why you're calling, to be in question on how you can support them, I think that you're in service to them, you will build a relationship that'll be long-standing as long as you stay in that where you're a consultant or a trusted advisor.
Yep, I agree. Well put. Another thing that you've got in the book, you covered the DISC system. And when I first learned about DISC many years ago, and even in sales training, it was hard. It was hard for me to internalize that. Once I did, man, what a powerful skill to possess, right? And so, I mean, people can get the book and review that. But how can somebody, is it possible, to quickly use the tool, or at least properly use the DISC assessment in sales?
Well, I think it is, Wes, and I think from my learning, I mean, I don't know, 20 years ago when I started, it's to really understand, and I think it's just the awareness, number one, is that not everyone is built like me, or not everyone is built like you. And so the way that other people want to learn or listen or get information is really important that I think about them, not me. So I have a quick story I'm going to tell on Dave. We had a client who wanted Dave to come over and actually speak to them about a program teaching all their salespeople about DISC. And so Dave is, in the DISC language, a high D and a high C. So wow. Dave likes, when he's buying, he likes, which stands for conscientious. He likes a lot of information. He's analytical. He wants to weigh the pros and cons and so on. So when he's presenting to this person who is a very high D, and D's like, bottom line, fast, give it to me, bullet point, let me make a choice, and I'm going to sign off. Dave felt very unfulfilled in the presentation because as Dave walked in with several pamphlets and examples and, I guess, credibility statements and so on, this fellow just said, how much and when can we do it, and I'm ready to sign. And Dave was really uncomfortable because the C style, he wanted to give him all the validation, all the reporting, and Dave walked out like with a contract and a check, and yet he felt unsuccessful because he hadn't been able to share all this information.
Wes, this was so frustrating. Honest to God, I had a whole wheelbarrow full of facts and stuff that I wanted to roll through this guy so he would sign. He started out saying, I'm ready to go. It was crushing. It was the most depressing thing I ever went through. I left with an order and thought, God, that just didn't feel good. Isn't that bizarre?
Well, like I tell people, you probably told them too, when they're ready to buy, shut up.
Yes. But to go back, there are 4 behavioral styles, and each style really has a preference on how they like information, how they listen, how they want to be presented to, and also what motivates them. So in the book, I mean, and you can go online, but in the book, it really gives it good examples of, from a sales perspective, how you adapt your style to really enhance the experience of the other person. And you can learn quickly, I think, Wes, who's the D, I, S, or C. I'll give you real quick. D's go, Jeff Smith, and so if they're picking up the phone. I's would say, hi, this is Marhnelle. How are you? S's would answer the phone. Hi, this is Marhnelle. May I help you? And C's would say, this is Miss Hibbard. Who's calling? See the difference? So they're very identifiable.
So we like all the high I people that are, hi, how are you? Those are the ones we like to call.
Yeah.
Well, they're at least a friendly conversation, but they can be flakes sometimes too, right?
You're right. Sorry.
Well, at least when you're trying to sell to them, right, they'll talk your ears off, and they'll love it, and then you call the next day, and they forget you even spoke to them.
You're so funny. You know what eyes are motivated by, though? They like to be, they really like to look good. So if you said, XYZ company bought this, and they did this, and that, it makes them look good in the eyes of their employer, and so it's all in the book. But it's good stuff, to your point. And you know what? You can use it at home, too, right, Wes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
excellent.
Hopefully my wife and kids won't listen to this. I won't let them listen.
Yes, that's right.
Not till later. Okay, so the dreaded send me some information. In your book you call it SMS, right? Send me something.
Yeah.
So I wish I had seen this a lot earlier in my sales career. So can you elaborate on that topic?
Yeah, well, the send me something thing is pretty interesting. When we do it in class, and our instructors say to the class, some corporate event, they'll say, all right, so if the guy or gal says, send me something, what does that mean? And then quickly you get all these blurt outs. Well, that means they're trying to blow you off. It means they're trying to get rid of you. It means no sale. I mean, they come up with this stuff so quickly. And then we say to them, all right, well, let's not say SMS. Let's just say that they said, I'll tell you what, I've got to run to a meeting, so why don't you go ahead and Ziggy me? And I got to go, clicked. And then we say to the people, what would they mean if they said Ziggy them? And then they say, I don't know. And then we said, well, then what would you do? They said, well, I'd ask them, what do you mean Ziggy? Well, then why don't you ask what SMS means? Send me something. Because it could mean they're blowing the guy off. It could mean they're not interested. It could mean they're very interested. Who knows what it means without asking? So the request of send me something first begins with qualifying. Otherwise, we have salespeople who have a pipeline of SMSs, which are what Marhnelle calls a pipe dream rather than a pipeline. And so it requires that the person who hears the send me something request qualifies the validity of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So an example would be they would say, John, I'd be happy to send something. So that I send the right thing, would you mind if I ask you a couple more questions? That would be one qualifier. If the person says, no, I can't do that, just send it and I've got to go. Well, maybe it wasn't authentic. There's some guessing that starts to take place. But if they say, sure, go ahead, then I think there's more interest that the SMS is a qualified interest. Or I might say, boy, that's great, I'd be happy to send something. May I ask what interested you enough to request me to send something?
Mm-hmm.
One could do that. Or they could say, I'd be happy to send it. What is your email? And then they could ask them, do you think you'll have time to take a look at what I send? When we say that, we get a lot of energy pushback. People are like, well, that's kind of insulting and so on. But we're really trying to smoke out to some degree the authenticity of the request, and especially for those salespeople on full commission, because they don't have time to just send things and then believe that they've got an interested party. It really does require qualifying. And in the book, we'll leave this one a mystery, but anyone who's listening that buys the book can go into the book and look up number 6, as we call it. When there's an SMS request, there's a response called number 6 that is absolutely powerful, and it converts a send me something request into an appointment in the range of 70 to 85% of the time.
Nice.
Very powerful.
Yeah, and it's just standing your ground, right? And again, I think it comes down to that self-respect. Like, hey, don't blow me off. I always tell people, hearing no early in the conversation is a win. I'd rather hear it now than 3 months or 6 months later, when I've already put you on my pipeline and forecasted it and predicted it, and then it didn't happen.
Right.
But if I don't have all those numbers to fluff up my pipeline, then I have to go prospect. Uh-oh.
You know what? I think you hit the nail on the head. That is true. I think there's a lesson in here in that, again, it's how we view what we've got to offer, and being okay that they're not interested, and even being as bold and courageous as asking, if you can give me feedback, why would that be? Not in a confronting way, but really so you grow and learn. And if someone says, well, you had nothing of value to say to me, I mean, wow, thank you. Now I've got to really practice. Some of what I like to do is have the salespeople practice their value statement, which we talked about. Is this engaging? Would you honestly, Wes, listen to me if I said X, Y, Z? And if you give me honest feedback, wow, isn't that wonderful? And that I can go to school on that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's solid. And that's why I like the live training y'all do. When I first got out of the Air Force, I became a stockbroker, and they put us through 2 weeks of training, and we had to. We didn't go to the front of the room. we went to a separate little office right off the main training room. There were like 40 of us, right, in this auditorium. And then some of the managers would come in, and we had to go to the other room and call in. And this tough guy, I still remember this guy, old Army drill sergeant. This was 1997, and smoking was already like not really encouraged. But they let him just walk around the building smoking, just the old grayback gorilla, right, and old jock. And we had to call in. He put us on speakerphone and would just rip us to shreds. And it wasn't as informative as what you teach, but it did make me tough. You either got tough or you got going.
Yeah, exactly. There is some value in that. You practice, and when you got on the phone, it was probably much easier. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, so one more question, and then we can call it a day. But you've trained people, in all different size companies. Have you noticed particular characteristics that good salespeople share? Can anyone learn to be successful? So, are salespeople born or are they made?
Yeah, Dave and I mean, what I love about working with Dave is that he is authentic to who he is and I am to me, and sometimes the differences really make it a fabulous situation. So I believe that people that really value what they're selling or, the services they provide, there's more like a people service. I think they can be amazingly successful if they get from that's their mindset, and they're really committed to being of service, and that means that they can make a lot of money and all sorts of things. So I think it's a desire. That's personally what I think, and I'd love to hear what you think, Dave.
Yeah, well, Marhnelle and I agree and disagree a lot, but I agree in this case. But I have three things, Wes, that I will parallel a little bit of what Marhnelle said about characteristics of the best. One is that they have solid mechanics. That is, they know how to do their job. They know how to presentation skills. They have market knowledge. They have competitive knowledge. They understand how to listen. All of these kind of mechanics of selling. The other part of the mechanics that is really critical today is having deep product knowledge, because that's what makes us a good advisor, listening and being able to draw upon deep knowledge. And then the third thing that we find is that the best salespeople are being pulled by some personal vision of what they want in their life, such that they outperform. So, if you've got 3 kids that you want to get through college, or maybe your dad is ill and you want to help him be healthy, or maybe there's a trip that you promised somebody, your family, maybe you and your family. There's something out there that is so important that you will do the difficult thing again. So having a compelling vision, as we call it, a magnet in the book, having excessive product knowledge, and having the fundamental mechanics to know how to execute your job is critical. And most of that, you take a look at those 3 things, only one is generally being taught by corporations, and that's product knowledge, as you said, Wes.
Right.
So we're leaving out 2/3 of the equation of what makes people tick.
Right. Amazing, huh? I mean, sometimes I'm literally shocked that businesses still have their doors open when you see them from the inside out.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes you wonder, but it's what Marhnelle said. There's this assumption when she mentioned early on that if you have any experience, you know how to sell, or you know how to drive revenue, or net new business. That demand generation is what you understand, and it's not the case. Just the experience doesn't equal competency. Yep.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between somebody who has sold and somebody who will sell.
Right. I remember Dave was actually doing a training for a large company, international firm, and this gentleman came up to Dave and said, hey, do you do any personal coaching? And this probably was 8 years ago. And Dave said, I travel so much, I really don't. He says, because I would be very interested. So later in the program, the senior executive said, oh, I saw Phil came up and talked to you, and, you know, he was one of the top guys. And Dave said, what one was Phil? What one was Phil? Well, Phil was the one that came up and said, would you do any personal coaching? Mm-hmm. Which I'd like to absolutely end with this, Wes, is that really to be good, it's a constant process. It really is. You know, SOAR may be one tool. How many other tools are available? But what I really see is the ones that are successful. It's a constant learning, constant challenging, raising the bar, and taking 100% responsibility for your outcome. You know, Jordan was once quoted in one of the playoffs and by someone interviewing him after he had missed a shot, and they asked him, was it because of the defenders is why he missed the shot? And Jordan said, it has nothing to do with the defenders. It's between me and the basket.
Right. Very nice. Well, David and Marhnelle, thank you very much for your time. I want to make sure we get everybody your correct website, right? It's Dialexis, D-I-A-L-E-X-I-S, dialexis.com. So that's where they can get your book, right? And I assume it's on all of the big sites as well, Amazon, and et cetera?
Right, but you know what? Better yet, why don't we get it's just a much more interactive, and it has a lot more white papers, and it's dedicated just to SOAR. SOAR Selling, SOARSELLING, SOARselling.com. And I think that's easier one because it really speaks about what we've been talking about today. There's videos, YouTubes, white papers, so please have at it. Our goal is to support people to create the life they want, and that is what we're all about. So the better salesperson you are, hopefully that creates the life you want.
So go to SOARselling.com, I think, for your listeners, is the best place to learn about SOAR. Thanks very much, Wes, for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And I look forward to catching up with you again.
I love it. And call us back, and we'd love to do a live answer question after, okay?
Okay, after your trip, we will do it.
Okay, thanks, Wes. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Not bad for a first episode, huh? Do go and check out their book. I've got a signed hardcover copy here, and it's from 2013. So when I was interviewing them, you know, their book had just come out, and I did go through it. And they've got a lot of good information. They've got a lot of good tactics, and I don't like to use that word too much because too many salespeople are looking for the easy button. They're looking for tricks and phrases and something to just flip somebody, and it really isn't that easy. But when I talk about tactics, you know, they talk about bridge and shift, kind of like jiu-jitsu, right, or judo. It's that soft yield where you let the prospect, you know, if they're coming on hard, let them come, right? But use that momentum to turn things around rather than try to meet them head to head. They talk about bundling, where you let the prospects give all of their objections without responding. A lot of times people just need to sound things out. They just need to hear themselves rattle off the things. And then you can address them one by one. A lot of times people will just talk themselves out of their own objections. They talk about mining, right, or collecting or grouping the objections, the benefits, and there's a lot of benefits to doing that, right? But ultimately they say collect everything before you try to solve. And that's really important. And I always say in my own training, whoever's asking the questions is in control of the conversation. We as salespeople are in charge of structure. The prospect is in charge of content. We have to ask the right questions, and we got to go deep. We have to go 3 and 4 levels deep most of the time to really get to the truth, because typically the prospect themselves don't even know, and we don't have the answer. The answer truly does lie within. Sure, we have some solutions, we have some recommendations, have some ideas how to help them, but they have to be open to that. But they have to open up and really admit to what the issue is. Then the answer really does become quite obvious most of the time. But you as an expert, if it's not obvious, they've come to you for a reason. You're the best for a reason. You're worth them giving you their money for a reason. So you can figure out what the solution is. Okay? So thanks for listening. I'll leave with the old school outro music that I had in this original episode. But over the years, you'll see I've played with the music, and I think I like what I have now. We'll see how long I keep it, but I've had it for a while. But, thanks for listening. For the notes on this episode, head on over to thesaleswhisperer.com/session1. And it's the number 1. And you can get a link to their books. You can get a link to their website. Leave a comment. Leave a 5-star review, please, on iTunes. I'd appreciate it. Help me get the word out. And thanks for listening. And as always, remember to sell different.